presentation to the other, so if we are ahead of schedule, that's fine. We won't worry about that at all. We'll get you out of here earlier. But we anticipated the amount of time based on what we did last year. And I think we have a pretty full day ahead of us. Thought we'd take a moment and do some introductions, and then we'll talk to you a little bit about the process for today and also for our budget process in general. So I'm Tina Meserve, I'm the superintendent.
I'm Mary Martin, chair of the RSU 16 board.
I'm Jennifer Bonig. I'm a school committee member and I live in Mechanic Falls.
Linda Jason, tech director for the district.
I'm Kelly Marston. I'm the assistant principal at Pullman Community School.
I'm Rick Benoit. I'm the principal at PCS.
I'm Kim Spencer. I'm the principal at Minot Consolidated School.
I'm Ryan Pache. I'm the principal at Elm Street School.
Bernice Frazier from Minot.
Colleen Quinn, Minot Budget Committee.
Holly Day, Special Education Director.
Tina Love, School Board and Living Minot.
Leo Furlan, Budget Committee, Poland.
Kathy Fifield, Mechanic Falls Town Council.
Wendy Ritchie, finance coordinator.
Mariella Jones, School Board, live in Poland.
Kim Bray, assistant superintendent, also live in Poland.
So what our process is going to be today is each principal or director will go through a presentation for you, and they will talk a little bit about, they have three different parts of their presentation. The first one is going to be just a little bit of information, we call it by the numbers, about their school or their department, and then they're going to share what we call our maintenance of effort budget and any increases or decreases and why they're there, and then they're going to also share with you what's been already cut before even getting here and what's on their priority list that they're hoping you will consider adding to our maintenance of effort budget. And so sharing a little bit about our process I thought would be helpful to you. The administrative team has been working on our budget since mid-December, and they work with their staff to find out what the needs are in the building, and then from there it comes to the administrative team, and we work through what is in their needs list, and we start prioritizing. So when we get to a place where we feel like, okay, these are our biggest priorities, but we think some of the other things you have on your list are going to need to be cut if we're going to get these priorities. So they've been through 2 rounds of cuts. And just for transparency purposes, we want you to know what those cuts were, because they have come forward with needs that they feel they have in their school that as a team and as a superintendent, I've said that's going to have to be reduced if we're going to be going forward with a budget that we feel like is kind of like our bottom line that we want to be supported by the committee. So we're going to kind of go through that full process with you. And while they're presenting, it's perfectly fine for you to raise your hand and get their attention and ask questions along the way. But we'll also pause at the end of their presentation for any questions once you see the kind of the big picture of their school or their department. And at the end of the day, I have about an hour set aside for questions or comments after you see all of the 5 school presentations, and anything that you may want to know more about that we would bring to the next meeting. So that's kind of what we're thinking about for a process. And I think Mary wants to talk to you a little bit about the purpose of the committee and a little information about that.
Okay, and I also want to say welcome and thank you. And this is an important first step in establishing our budget for next year. And we really want it to be a collaborative process that by law it says the school board needs to set the budget for the next year. And if you looked through the mailing that you got earlier where it had the list of meetings, that's scheduled for May 11th, which is presentation and adoption of the final FY16 budget. But between now and then, what we need and what we hope we have here is lots of discussion, that you help us out with the prioritizing that Tina mentioned, and that will result in a proposed draft budget from this committee to regarding the FY16 budget. And then we'll go to the informational meetings in the towns, the same processes as last year, and consider the public input, and then make some possible revisions to that proposed budget. And we did last year when we went to those meetings. There were a couple of things that came up that people in the town said this is really important to us, and we considered that and made some minor changes in that proposed budget. We felt that the process worked well last year, and that it worked well because there was active participation and engagement of all the members of this committee, that everybody's voice was heard. We had some respectful discussions and disagreements, and we problem solved through those together. We also focused last year on our strategic plan, which we've made some revisions in, not significant revisions, but some. And that helped us when we got down to sort of the bottom line decision. Is we looked at that strategic plan and said which of these things most support the direction, the vision, the mission of RSU 16. And we have purposely established a budget committee that's made up of people with different perspectives, whether that's administration or school board or community members. We all come from kind of a different place, which is important. But our goal, we do have a common goal, and that goal is to develop a proposed budget that meets the needs of our students while taking into consideration the challenges and the opportunities within our schools and within our communities. And it is no small task, but I am confident, and we're confident that we can achieve that goal. So once again, I would say thank you for your time, your commitment, and your willingness to engage in this important process. So thanks.
So the first thing that I want to do is talk a little bit about our goal, as Mary said, and kind of set some historical perspective for all of you as a way to prepare you for some of the items that you're going to see in our budget. So this is exactly the same as last year. And as I looked at it, I thought, you know, I can't imagine it will ever change because we're always going to be working towards the same goal. And that is that we need to maintain the programs and the facilities that we currently have at an appropriate level. We need to be sensitive to our communities because we know that even though the economy is coming around a bit, there are a lot of our constituents who are still struggling. So we want to present a budget that we feel like they can support. And then the last piece, as Mary said, is we don't want to be stagnant as an educational system. The world is changing and the needs of our learners are changing and the workforce is changing. So we really have a priority and a sense of urgency for working towards the promises that we have in our strategic plan. And for those of you who are new to the process, our strategic plan was set 3 years ago, or we spent a full year working on it, and we had hundreds of people speaking to what they wanted from their school department. So we included information that came from community, parents, staff and students, and also our school board. So we had really good participation and support for that, and we feel obligated to try to meet some of the goals that we've set forth, even if we can't maybe meet all of them. So that's what you're going to see today. And one of the things that I like to share is that there have been a lot of sacrifices that have been made by the school department and also at the town level, I know, in the last 6 or 7 years because of the economic downturn. And for just some historical knowledge, the amount of money the state designated to education was $978 million in 2008. That has steadily declined over the years, and as of last year, it was down to $894 million. And we know in 7 and 8 years, there's no costs that have dropped. And so for school departments, what that has meant is that we are adjusting what we can offer and trying to keep the most important aspects of our programs, but knowing again that costs are going up and you can't keep decreasing without some increases. So our budget back in 2008 was almost $22 million, and it declined down to $17.1 million. It was between $17.1 and $18.5 million for 4 years. So we're talking a decline of $5 million out of a $22 million budget. That's a significant decrease. And as a homeowner and a person that has to handle your own personal budgets, you know when there are decreases for an extended period of time that eventually there are many things that come due all at the same time. And so you're going to see some increases this year based on that, and particularly when we're talking about needs of our facilities. So, you know, that's why I feel like it's really important to know that there have been a lot of things that have been put on hold as we were trying to support the community at a time of economic need. And I think it's going to be a challenging budget year, especially when we're setting the priorities of what we can really put forward this year, and what again may need to be put on hold a little bit longer. So last year was the first year that our budget got back to the $19 million range, and this year currently we're at $19,950,000. So what is a maintenance of effort budget? There's always some confusion about what this means, and so I do always like to talk about this first. Maintenance of effort means exactly that. It's what do we need to maintain the current programs. So it does not mean that you're going to see a flat budget, because salaries go up, insurance costs go up, a variety of other things go up. And to maintain a facility may mean that you need a $50,000 roof put on. So it doesn't mean the facility line would be flat either. So again, we're looking at what does it cost just to maintain the current services that we're providing. There's a couple of things that I thought might be helpful as we're talking about the budget process that you would like to know. And so we every year get a subsidy form. It's called our 279s from the state, and the state has what they call essential program and services numbers. And what that means is they'll say, to meet the basic minimum of what is expected of a school department, here's how much you're going to need to spend. And they subsidize part of that cost. And then there is a town required amount that the town needs to spend. So we have just recently gotten our 279s, which makes this process a little bit easier. The challenge is going to be that there's a lot of talk about challenge to the governor's proposal. So I think we can't be real confident that these numbers are going to be the final numbers, but we do have his initial proposal, and so we can share what that would mean if this stays as the final proposal. And there's a few things I thought that might be helpful for you to know. Our official subsidy count this year was for 1,766 students. That's 3 more students than last year, and it's a 3-year increase. So we increased about 30 or 40 students the year before that. So that's always good. You get money per student, and so our subsidy count has gone up just a few students, not a lot. In the subsidy, they determine what kinds of things they'll pay for. So they give us money for each teacher we have. They give us money for each student that we have. Most other staff also you get some subsidy for, like your clerical staff, your librarians, your nurses. We get additional funds for disadvantaged students, for English language learners, for the early primary grades. And our funds for the increased funds that we have for disadvantaged students have risen because our free and reduced lunch have risen. We get a total of $837,000 additional dollars because of the numbers of disadvantaged students that we have. So that's a pretty significant amount of disadvantaged money. We also get money for technology.
Is that year over year?
In 1 year, yes. Yeah. We also get money for technology, and again, you're going to hear the technology budget later in the day, but we spend a significant amount of money on technology, and we get a significant amount from the state because they know how essential that it is for us to have appropriate technology to use with our students and also to keep our schools running. We get $283,000 in subsidy money for technology. We get money for supplies, and we get money for professional development. There are some things that the state doesn't fund or doesn't fund well. One of them is sports. So we get about $60,000 to provide sports at the high school. And of course, all of you know that $60,000 probably doesn't even come close to covering the small stipends that coaches get. So the town picks up the additional money for sports programs and things like that. the state also gives us money for things like assessments and things like that. So they basically have a formula. We get a sheet with all of that lined up for us, and that tells us what the allocation is for the year. This year, our allocation is going up, and so that, again, is a big help. Unfortunately, the help is shifting to the towns because they're increasing mill rate, so it's not as much of a help as it looks like. So out of about between $400,000 and $500,000 increase, the state is only picking up $145,000 of that, and the town required local is going up, about $300,000. So that's a little bit disappointing, and if the governor's budget is not fully supported and more of that shifts back to the state, that will be an advantage for us. So I think this is probably worst case scenario. I think it is possible that some of the money will be shifted back to the state level, and that's what we're hopeful that will happen. But if it does not, we get about $145,000 in extra subsidy this year from the state.
So Tina,
yes.
Going back to, you had said something about the required amount that the towns
yes.
is going up, but I think, didn't we discuss the other day that actually we're already spending that amount because we're already spending over EPS?
Yes.
So the EPS required amount is going up, but actually the amount that they're saying, okay, towns, you have to put this amount in now, we already
do that. Yeah. So. It still will be a hit for us if we have additional requirements above what we're currently paying. So, but you're right, it's not like we are going to be in any violation if it's not a $300,000 increase, because we're already over our required level. And if you'll remember, the Central Programs and Services is basically the minimum amount that they feel is necessary to provide the programs and services that will meet the demands of, like, the learning results and educating students.
So
yes, Bernice?
This year's allocation already?
What's that?
What's the figure about this year's allocation?
It's, I'd have to look. Let me just, Kim, can you look at our 279?
It's going up.
Yes, it's going up over last year. I have it right here if you want to.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Got yours, okay. Just the bottom line.
Yep.
Not the sheet, this one, right. So our 100% of EPS allocation is $19,019,000.
And the additional amount that the state is going to be giving us net, you said was around 145?
Yeah, 145,000 additional over last year's allocation from the state portion. Again, it's a complicated sheet, so I didn't print it out for everyone because I don't think you would understand it without significant training. Even every year, the superintendents go through additional training because it's even for us, it's hard to keep up with what all of the different ways that they are calculating the funds. But I thought some oversight in what kinds of things the state pays for, what kinds of things that we have to pick up, and then what we're looking for as our basic subsidy. So the next thing that I want to talk about is just a little bit of what's to come to prepare you, kind of give you that overview and plant the seeds for you. So our current budget for this year is $19,950,000. Going into next year, we know there are going to be some increases. One of them is the salary increase that we have. So we have our employees on average are getting a 3% increase in salaries. That's a $310,000 increase. That's non-negotiable. It has, it's contracted, and we have to come up with that amount of money. The other piece of information that we have that we know will probably be an increase is insurance, but we don't have those figures yet. Last year they came out before the final budget went through. We had predicted 5%, and then we found out it was 0, and we got to eliminate that from the final budget. So this is a placeholder. It could come in. I mean, school districts have 13% increases, and some had 0 last year, and we were one of the 0. We were 0. The year before we were only 3%. So our staff is relatively healthy, and that's good for us. And I hope that they were healthy enough last year to keep it at 5% or below. And if we came in at 0 again, we'd be really thrilled. But after 2 years of little to no increases in insurance, I don't feel confident that it'll be 0. But we will get that information sometime in the next few months, probably not until April. But if we get that in April, we'll adjust this number to be actual, so that that could go up or it could go down. The other things that are in our maintenance of effort budget but are going to be pretty significant increases is our special education costs. We this year had 6 new students move in out-of-district placement that were in out-of-district placements, and so we're currently way under budgeted for that line. We are about $200,000 in the hole right now, and we have frozen the budget early and are trying to make sure we don't have to go back to taxpayers to find that money, and I think we're going to be all right. But to be prepared for next year, we're anticipating an increase in that line of $134,000 so that we don't end up in a situation like we're in this year. The other piece of that is you have to transport those students to the out-of-district placement. So the cost for that is up $19,000 above what we predicted for this year. We have laptops on carts at PCS and Elm Street that are very old. They need to be replaced just to maintain our current technology services, and also in consideration of the fact that now for the MEA Smarter Balanced testing, it's done on the computer, so we have to have good technology or appropriate technology for that. It's about $24,000, I think, a cart, and you'll see that all in Linda's presentation at the end of the day. We have been approved for 2 buses. We feel like we need 3 of. We've been approved for 3. We feel like we need 2 of them just to maintain our fleet at an adequate level. So that'll be about a $40,000 cost. I will remind you that these are all paid for in the future. This is basically we're fronting the money and the state pays it back. So it's not a loss in the future, but it certainly will impact this first year's budget. Snow plowing costs are not currently being budgeted for except a $5,000 stipend to one person. And we have been in a major crisis this year trying to keep our yards plowed with no money to do it and with no staff. We've been using some salaried employees who are working all night long and then coming for their day job for no additional pay. So we have talked to the town managers about, is there a way that we could do some service sharing between the town and the school department? And that hasn't been resolved yet, but we're in a good starting place for having those conversations. So if we can't do something on that end, what we're considering doing is contracting out the high school, middle school, which all students from all towns go to, and the contract quote was about $50,000 to do that. And then we need to have some salary money or some stipend money to get our elementary schools plowed. What we're hoping for is that it may be that the towns would pick up the plowing for the elementary schools, and then we use our staff to do the high school, and we would save that $50,000. But again, we have to, work that with the towns because they also have their own plowing to do and limited staff and all of that. So we have to budget accordingly to take care of our facility. But there may be some resolution to this before the final budget is, and we may be able to pull a chunk of this out if that works. And if not, we're going to go forward with this as a recommendation.
Did we get? You said around 50,000 was the contract that you said bought. Did you get other estimates, or was it just one estimate?
From what I understand, they have done this multiple times, and that's about what is expected. It could be a little more, it could be a little less, but it is a lot of money.
That's a lot for one school.
Yeah, it's just really big parking lots and needing expensive equipment. So we're thinking our towns could do it a lot cheaper because they have the equipment. It might be, just increasing hours or having a part-time employee might do that, and it might do some sort of a cooperation with us. But again, we've got to plan accordingly and know that they've got their own challenges for plowing out their own community. So we're hoping that there'll be some solution that's not quite this expensive, but right now this is looking at about what it's going to cost us. And then facilities needs are great, and you'll have a facilities report. I don't know if it's next week or the following week, but in a few weeks we will do our facilities report and again talk about some of the priorities and needs for the buildings and grounds. So the next thing is to talk about a little bit about our revenues. We had about $275,000 of our fund balance dedicated to this year's budget. And at the end of the summer, we have our audit completed, and we had $607,000 in our fund balance. So that's good. That's better than we've had for a while. And so for next year, we're thinking we'll be able to contribute more than the $275 into the budget. Usually we do about half of what we have in fund balance, and so we're not going to have a lot left this year because of the gap we have in the out-of-district placement costs that we're making up for. But even if there's $50,000 to roll forward into fund balance, we may be able to contribute anywhere from $300,000 to $350,000 of our fund balance towards the budget, which will be helpful in, again, eliminating a little bit of the impact on taxpayers. We also have $120,000 remaining in our capital improvement fund, and most of our projects are completed, and we're in, again, a better place here than we have been because that fund was so low last year. The town selectmen really said they felt uncomfortable with how low our capital improvement line was and our ability to sustain any emergencies. So we supported that fund a little bit better, and that will help us as we're facing the increases that you're going to see in our facilities needs for next year. And then the last thing is we put in for a $95,000 in our feasibility study. We still have $90,000 in there because we haven't retained the architect yet. So that won't be $90,000 at the end of the year, but there will be some left in that fund. And again, we're still at the early stages of how we're going to deal with the overcrowding at Bruce Whittier Middle School. So supporting that again will probably be necessary, but again, we've got a little bit of money will be left here by the end of the year, and that again is always helpful. So where have we had some savings? You can see there aren't many of them, but one big one is going to be the charter school costs, and I've taken a tiny risk and taking all costs for charter schools out of our budget. If before the legislature there's a bill to fund charter schools differently and not have them come directly out of our local schools, so they've already taken the money off the top and given us our subsidy for our school. And if that portion of the governor's budget goes through, that's good news for us. It means $164,000 that we were anticipating paying off to charter schools now will be shared by all schools in the state at a much smaller level. And again, it was taken off the top, so we never see that loss directly. We've already felt it in our 279s. And
I think
yes.
Yesterday the education committee unanimously supported that. So hopefully that is something.
Yeah, there's very strong support on both sides of the aisle for this change, and so that's why I took it out. I have pretty strong confidence that that is going to go through and be reality. But I did want to put it here and just let people know if for some reason that bill doesn't pass or there's some delay, we would possibly have to put $164,000 back in our budget. Central office has finished their payment on the addition, so we will have a $25,000 decrease in our costs for that. And then we have 2 buses that are coming off the cycle, so we're actually going to be making $38,000 on those buses, but we don't have to pay out on them. So that will offset getting 2 new buses. It will kind of be a wash, which will be really helpful if the buses go through as a priority. And you will see that, again, they're fully funded in the end, but you get that last year, you actually are getting back what you fronted the first year, so that's why that comes in as a savings. So what are our identified needs? One of our identified needs is a business manager. And I put that first because I know it's always controversial to add administration. And one of the things that we had in our strategic plan is that as of last January, we were supposed to do a needs assessment, and the board has done that needs assessment. And we are certainly staffed at the central office with 2 people performing all of the roles of the central office. And the school department had one in the past. They cut that position 3 years ago. And and I'm going to let Mary, we'll talk more about this when we get to the central office budget, which will be presented probably not for another 3 or 4 weeks. But I just think it's important to put it out there and start talking about it early, because it is an addition in administration that I think at some point could be controversial. We also have a need for a school counselor for Minot and Elm Street School. We have a school counselor at PCS. We do not have one at the other 2 schools. And we do have some social work, but that's different than what a guidance counselor does. And so you will hear from the principals today the need for having those services to support students in a variety of ways. At PCS, we have a need for a half-time special ed teacher. So when Holly gives her special education budget request, you will see a request for an additional staff member there. And again, she's going to talk to you about the case management of that teacher and why that's necessary. We have 1 foreign language offered at the high school, that's Spanish. We offer no other foreign language opportunities for our students. And with the new proficiency-based diploma requirement, our students have to be proficient in a foreign language. And so we've put it as a priority to add a foreign language teacher to the middle school so that they can start with that language instruction 2 years earlier to make sure that our students can be proficient. There's never been a time in history that if you weren't proficient in a foreign language, you couldn't graduate. And that's exactly what our students who are now 8th graders are going to face. And we feel like it's really important that we are preparing them for what the expectation is. We have a class size of 70, I think, students at PCS in kindergarten.
69
69.
Right now.
And so we're anticipating needing another 1st grade teacher. Rick will talk more about that. Science course at PRHS. Again, they're aligning with new standards that are coming through the state, which require different things of our students at an earlier time period, so they are making a course proposal. You'll hear about that when Carrie speaks with you about her budget. We are now also have new standards for math. Common Core math standards are significantly different than what they were previously. We have not updated our math curriculum to match those standards. And again, we keep putting it off because it's expensive to replace your curriculum, but we're getting to that place where we really are going to need to invest in our math curriculum. Security cameras on the buses, those are obvious. And then again, you're going to see some capital improvement needs. So I've listed all of these things with the strategic plan number or code beside them, because I think it's really important for the committee to know that as an administrative team, we all brought our wish lists and what we felt we needed for our students, and then we looked at our strategic plan and prioritized and said, which one of these items are going to have the biggest impact on students and learning? Which one of them are supported by the strategic plan and helping us to meet the promises of that? And so all of these, as you can see, do that.
Tina, a really quick question if I could. So what I remember from the process last year is that the budget that we're presented with is the maintenance of effort budget. Does not include these
any
identified
of these
needs.
Right.
So these are things that, depending on how we feel about maintenance of effort, we may or may not like to do. The principals and others will have a chance to talk with us about those.
Yeah,
but they're
absolutely.
not included in the numbers being given to us.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
The school counselor, is that 2 half-time positions or 1 full-time position?
Well, what we're hoping for is to hire a full-time guidance counselor, because it's difficult to find people who want to work half-time. So what we're expecting is we'll hire a full-time guidance counselor that will work half the time at Minot Consolidated and half the time at Elm Street School. And that we'd have a fully employed staff member, because you're more apt to retain them if you do it in that way. And also more apt to get a qualified and staff member that's got the experience and the qualifications that we need. And then unknown costs, of course, the charter schools there, although I feel pretty confident about that. You never know about your fuel costs. We've estimated based on what we have used this year. Liability insurance, we have to bid out this year. Every 5 years by law, you're required to bid out, so we have no idea what that's going to come in at. Wendy, did we put that in at 10% increase? So we put in a 10% increase. Again, if we know more before budget goes through, that could be adjusted, but I have a feeling we won't know early enough to get that changed. And then health insurance increases. We've had a pretty significant increase in health insurance costs, and so you'll see that when you're looking at our budget lines. Part of that, I'm sure, is the Obamacare. We've had people who have, children who are 24 years old who weren't on their plans before, but because they're required to have insurance are now back on their parents' plans. And so we have noticed an increase this year in those costs. And again, we're waiting to find out what the standard increase is going to be, if anything. So that's all an unknown. And I think the big unknown is whether there's going to be a passage of the governor's budget, because that's looking really unstable right now. And so sometimes you feel like there's good support for the governor's budget, and the numbers are pretty solid, and I don't think this is one of those years. So that's it for me and my overview. Anybody have questions just in general? So the next agenda item is, I think, Rick Benoit from PCS. Our elementary schools are going this morning, and